Alright everyone, the Doge team has a new idea. Auditing Fort Knox. Trying to see, do we really have 5,000 tons of gold in Fort Knox? Because we're not entirely sure, because the last time it was audited was in the 1970s, under the Carter administration, I believe it was. This seems like a good idea to me. The public has a right to know, and also the international community has a right to know. There have been, for example, hit pieces against China. Now, I'm no fan of China. I don't support communism, so don't think that I'm defending the indefensible or anything like that. But one of the complaints about China is that it manipulates its economy, lies about the amount of gold that it has, the amount of various resources it has, and manipulates its currency. If the United States wants to take the moral high ground, and it wants to be able to bitch about China doing these things that it provably does, we have to be much more transparent about our economy. That means disclosing the amount of gold in Fort Knox, among many other things. We manipulate our currency too, but that's, beyond purview. And I've got plenty of currency here, matey. I'm a pirate. Anyway, China does that. If the United States wants to override them, diplomatically speaking, so it wants to get largesse with its allies and so forth, it's going to need to be more transparent. I support, therefore, an audit of Fort Knox. How much gold is there? It could be that you end up with a situation where they go into Fort Knox and they find out, oh shit, we've only got 1,000 tons of gold. Where did the rest of it go? Probably onto Mitch McConnell's cocaine yacht. He was snorting it up his nose after trading it to cartels or something. It could be that we've got more than expected. Could be that we got 7,000 or 8,000 tons. Who knows? We don't know because there's not been an audit in almost 50 years on the actual gold reserve. I was surprised to learn this, by the way. And this is what DOGE is really for. DOGE is for public disclosure. So the fact is that the public doesn't know everything that's going on. It doesn't know all of the budgetary, specifically economic issues. It doesn't have any clue about them. The legacy media doesn't report on them. The legacy media, for example, never told me that it was back in the 1970s that the last time an audit was conducted at Fort Knox, so that independent individuals could go in there and weigh the gold and say, okay, yeah, you have as much as you say, or maybe you have more, or maybe you have less. I was unaware of this fact. I'm a political commentator. I do this goddamn shit for a living. I wasn't aware of it. So imagine the average member of the public who, just reads the tagline. They have no clue whatsoever. We don't know how much gold is in Fort Knox. The government can, look at the Pentagon budget, for example. Right after 9/11, billions of dollars went missing. It was interesting how that coincided exactly with the same date, that particular report. Happens all the time, by the way. Government does this pretty much yearly. I think that auditing Fort Knox is a good idea. Public disclosure is never a bad thing. The public needs to know the answers about what's going on. They need to be informed. They need to have, and DOGE is doing a really great job at this. In only a few short weeks, DOGE has done more for government transparency than all of the agencies, which are themselves not generally transparent at all anyway, have done over the last decade. This does not mean that I'm part of the Elon worship cult, but it does mean that I'm a fan of this particular project. It seems like a good idea. People have a right to know where their money's going, what it's being allocated to, where their money is, and certainly 5,000 tons of gold accounted for would probably be a good thing. I have a feeling if they go in there, into Fort Knox, and they find that the gold's all there, well, maybe there's a few extra tons or something like that, that would raise markets. They would say, oh shit, the United States has a little bit more gold than we thought. Well, the United States is a pretty sound investment. We've got enough gold to buy a small third world country, supposedly, but we've got to make sure that it's actually there. This is just common sense. I mean, who could possibly argue against the idea that the public would know, that they would be assured, that the gold, in part backing our entire economy, only a small part, but it's there, is actually there. And if it's not there, oh shit, well, that's a little bit of a problem now, isn't it? Actually, it'd be a really big problem. Oh, Fort Knox only has 1 ton of gold in it. I mean, it's still a large amount of money, but it's not exactly economy backing. Instead of 5,000 tons, well, again, where did the rest of it go? Who took the gold? Or who sold the gold? And for what reason, by the way? Again, probably buying cocaine and a yacht or something like that. I have a feeling that Mitch McConnell decided to take a day visit and said, well, this bar here is mine, and I need to buy a boat or something like that. This is entirely possible, by the way. That's why Doge wants to go in and, sort of settle the score with regards to the checkbooks. This makes sense. The public has a right to know. Our international partners have a right to know. If we can establish that we are being above board and we're being moral with regards to our checkbooks, making sure the balance is right, we have no right to complain about nations like China that provably cook the books. And so if it is audited and we find that everything is proper, we have more moral high ground to go after countries that are predatory in the economical sense. This is a diplomatic move even more than it's an economical move. I mean, if we find that there's no gold there, it's just like lead bars are sitting on the shelf or something like that, it'd be a real big economical problem. If, though, the balance is right, we gain diplomatic leverage, actually, more than anything else. Because there are nations in the world that cook the books. We know that China does this. They've been talking about it for decades. But you can't complain about that unless you can establish to the public plausibly that we actually have the reserves that we claim that we have. That's just one part of the economy. But if we can't audit things, we should audit the Fed and the IRS and a bunch of other agencies too, by the way. If we can't audit ourselves, if the public is kept completely unaware of the actual situation, I would think that that would be a little bit of a problem. Hey, China, you're cooking your currency. Well, yeah, but you only have 2,000 tons instead of 5,000 tons in Fort Knox, so, knock it off. Knocks it off, pun intended, and leave us alone. It's a plausible argument that they could make. We have to do that. So I fully support this particular move by Doge. That's about all. Peace out.